So David and I are going home from a very manly place. On the way back, David asks me, he says, Nabil, we've been looking into this for quite a while. Where do you think the case for Christianity falls? From 0 to 100, where do you think the case for Christianity stands? I just thought about each criterion there. Well, it's 99% sure Jesus died on the cross, about 90% sure he claimed to be God, 90% sure he rose from the dead. I'm putting it at 80 to 85%, David. And he looks at me and he says, Nabil, well, why don't you accept the gospel then? And I said, David, it's because I'm 100% sure in Islam. Even if I'm 80 to 85% believing in the case of Christianity, the case for Islam is stronger. And he looked at me and he said, Nabil, you haven't even looked critically at the case for Islam. And I said, I know, but I'm just that certain. I've heard evidences of the Quran from childhood. I've heard evidences of Muhammad from childhood. I am certain that Islam is true. And he says, well, put it to the test. And here's the critical thing. He says, test it to the same degree you tested Christianity.
And the other sets of arguments I used was on Muhammad. I believed, having been raised as a Muslim, that Muhammad was the best man who ever walked this earth. Al-Insan al-Kamil, the perfect man. This is the man who's the perfect exemplar. And as I was taught Muhammad and I was taught Islam, Muhammad was the most peaceful man who ever lived. He's the most generous man who ever lived. He's the most loving, the most kind, the most humble. He took care of women, he took care of orphans, took care of widows. Muhammad was the best statesman, he was the best diplomat, he was the best general. It doesn't matter what epithet you throw at him, he deserves it because he's Muhammad. He's the chief of the prophets. That's what we believe. But what do the earliest sources say about Muhammad? And how reliable are those sources? We're going to take a look at that tonight. And we're going to take a look at the sources for the Quran.
If you define Islam as that religious system which the Muhammad in the pages of history left behind, there's no question that it's violent.